Welcome to the Results Grow podcast for home service professionals, where we chat with business owners and experts to discover what's delivered results to grow and succeed in their business. And now, your hosts, Steve Gatsby and Carrie Blackburn.
Go. Hey everyone, Carrie and Steve here again for the Results Grow podcast. We are here today with a special guest, Matt Buckwalter. Sorry, easy for you to say, or easy for me to say. But as you can tell, this is totally live when we make mistakes like this, and we're recording very early in the morning here on the West Coast. So if I fumble a bit with my intros and what I'm saying, it is early, but we are very happy to have Matt on here. And Matt is, or was, the former owner of 1 Hour Air Conditioning in Southeast Pennsylvania, Lancaster. Also, Benjamin Franklin Plumbing and Mister Sparky Electric. He still has some equity in that, but now he is part of Punctual Pros. Matt, thank you very much for joining Steve and I here today, and I hope all is well with you.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. It is very well.
Did I make any? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, did I make any mistakes with your intro there?
No. So yeah, we own and operate 3 businesses here in South Central Pennsylvania, which kind of span to the north side of Philadelphia, down on the Maryland border, and really go as far west as Gettysburg, if you're familiar with and you're a history buff from the Civil War. But we have a territory that spans 17 franchise territories in that area. We employ approximately about 150 people across those brands, and we really operate mainly out of 3 locations, 2 of which are in close proximity to each other, based on one's a larger install warehouse, which is about 4 miles from our main offices, and then we have a remote location which is in the Montgomery Bucks County area north of Philadelphia. So.
Interesting. Like, not to jump ahead, but so that's do you say 117 different franchise territories?
No, I'm sorry, 17 different
17.
franchise
So
territories.
is that in, again, so it's like for people that aren't familiar with franchises, did you need to buy each of those franchise areas, or is that, how does that work?
Yeah, they were purchased over the course of time. I think we made an initial investment when we transitioned our business. So our business was started in 1958. As the Roar Company. That company was doing primarily commercial and new construction installation for plumbing and HVAC work. I joined the company in 2000. At about that time, we transitioned specifically to residential service and replacement work. So, and this was on the heels of the start of Airtime 500, which was the brainchild of John Young and Jim Abrams, who were mentors and friends of mine. I was a comfort advisor at the time there, and when we transitioned in 2004, we were 1 Hour number 5 within the system. So we were the first 5 franchisees came on board at the same time. We were number 5, and as they say, the rest is history. So at that time, the franchise territories looked a little bit different than they do today, but we made an investment and felt like franchising was the way of the future, and that's why we decided to go that way.
Interesting. So you actually started in sales. You started as a comfort advisor. Maybe walk us through.
Matt has a very interesting background, because he was an athlete in high school, decathlete in pole vault and sprinting, if I recall correctly.
That is correct.
And then went to Penn State University, was an athlete there, graduate of Eastern Mennonite University in psychology, which I thought was really interesting, the fact that you have a degree in psychology and how that could help for sales. But then also what's really interesting is that your first foray into HVAC was that you were, your landlord was an owner of the HVAC company and hired you when you were looking for work at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
You did your research, Carrie.
I don't like to go into things without knowing what's, Steve knows I'm a very detailed-oriented person, so I like to know.
Yeah. So I'm by nature, I'm a very competitive person, an athlete. I was a Pennsylvania state champion in the pole vault in high school. I was a sprinter, as you'd indicated. I still hold, I think, the most varsity letters earned at my high school, which I think is 13. And we can walk through, those were in football, track, volleyball, and soccer. Soccer was my first love. I wasn't good enough to play at the Division I level. Now I have, a son that just graduated this year who played Division I soccer and actually golf, interestingly enough, and a daughter that plays Division I field hockey in the Big Ten. So it's, that apple didn't fall far from the tree. But, I actually met Larry Rohr, who was my landlord at the time. My wife and I moved back to Lancaster, and I was looking for a job. And we rented the first floor of a house that he owned. And as they say, I was just looking for an opportunity to earn commission. And he said, "Hey, I got something for you." The next day, I went to his office. We met, and the rest is history. I had a tremendous amount of success. So in 2000, I started as a full commission salesperson. That was right about the same time that, like I just shared with you earlier, the franchises of 1 Hour, Ben Franklin, and Mister Sparky were starting to unfold. And they had a crown champion program within the 1 Hour brands. And I was actually the first, I had the honor of being the first 1 Hour comfort advisor to earn their crown champion ring, which was this big gaudy, Super Bowl looking ring that for the first person to sell $1 million of replacement business. And really back, in the early 2000s, with average tickets of, right around $5,000, it took a lot of sales to do that. I mean, today our average replacements are $15,000, so you can get there much quicker. But I sold my first $1 million in the year of 2002. By September 4th, I had already sold $1 million in replacement business. So that was a big deal back then. It was fun. So,
and you were number 7 with that, right?
So I was number 7. I was ring number 7. So let me give you a background of who had ring numbers, 1 through 6. So, and it's interesting, it was 007. So it's the James Bond ring, right? The 007. But, Jim Abrams, John Young, Rebecca Castle, Lon Castle, and Carl DeBenny, who was a trainer at the time. I don't know if any of those names ring a bell to you guys. That's a way back thing. But those were the individuals that were involved at that time in the Clockwork program, which was the holding company for the brands of 1 Hour, Ben Franklin, and Mister Sparky. And so then I was the first comfort advisor to receive a ring. Henceforth, it was ring number 7. So, yeah, and you did your research on that too.
And were you the youngest to do that?
I don't know if I was the youngest. I was the first. I don't think I was the youngest.
Okay.
It just happened to be that year they put out the thing that the first person to achieve that in the course of that year would get a ring. Now there was subsequent other people that got 8, 9, 10, 11 that year, but I was the first person to get it done in the course of the year.
Maybe walk us through what size was the business when you first joined, and I guess walk us through your progression in your career until the point that you were running things. And
yeah. So when I joined the business, our business was probably $3.5 million of top line revenue back in the 2000s. So as you can see, if you're selling $1 million of replacement, I mean that year it was probably closer to $1.3 million. And you have plumbing revenue and heating and air conditioning service and replacement revenue. That was a big part of that business. So I was a very integral part of the growth of that business. Fast forward. So at that point in time, I was just an employee. I worked with a gentleman by the name of Scott Rohr. Scott was the son of Larry, who was the landlord that you had referenced earlier in the conversation. So Larry owned the business. Scott and I worked. Scott was in charge of the install teams that we had. I was a salesperson and consequently built and grew the sales team. I had an opportunity to go work for Clockwork in Culver City, California, to take over a business out there and run it. That was a short-term assignment. It was a year that I was there, and then I had the opportunity to come back to Pennsylvania and I was sold a very small share of the business that I, subsequently sold earlier this year. I owned 5%. In 2014, Larry, the father, sold.
You own 5% of the company that you were eventually CEO of in Pennsylvania?
That's correct. So I bought the first tranche in 2005.
Okay, so they like allowed you to buy in, or they offered you to buy in, they wanted you to buy in because you're an important part of it type thing.
That's correct. That's exactly correct. So that was the way to keep me there. And what I realized pretty early is that, the home services business was a great opportunity to create a lifestyle that I wanted for myself and my family in terms of wealth creation.
Could we ask what your buy-in was way back then?
What's that?
Could we ask what your buy-in was way back then?
My buy-in, I think my first tranche cost me $30,000.
Nice.
So the valuation of the business was very different. I mean, the one thing that I liked about that, and the one thing that, Larry was very, very adamant about, is we did not have debt in the business. The business was completely debt-free. So from my perspective, I was basically buying cash. So I was never in a position where the only debt that was ever leveraged in the business, it was, right around the end of 2021 when I bought Scott, my current business partner, out completely, which put me in a position to then sell to private equity.
Right.
And so I had to leverage a little bit of cash to do that. But I mean, it paid itself in spades, in 2 short years later. So, but
Nice.
that really was the only time that we had debt, on the business. So all of our vehicles were paid with cash. Every year we'd have a capital budget where we would do that. And as we grew, that became a significant challenge. And there was, there's different schools of thought around, how do you lease vehicles? How do you leverage for that? And, if you want to drive faster growth, there was ways to do it. But I've always been a pretty conservative person, as was Scott. So we never, there were situations where, having cash allowed us to do pre-buys of equipment, especially with, in the last couple of years with inflationary stuff, to get
discounts on it for
absolutely, because the distributors are looking for cash. So cash is never a bad thing. And cash is always king, as I always like to say, tell my kids that as well. So yeah, it was, in terms of in 2005, that small portion that I bought. Then in 2014, Scott and I bought his dad out, and his dad retired. And then, as I had said, we grew the business. At that time, we were probably somewhere around $10 million. And then when I bought
2014, you're about 10 million.
2014, we were about 10 million. And then when I bought Scott out, we were around $24 million of top line revenue. And when I exited the business, we were just right around $35 million. So
nice. That was a rapid growth from the time that you bought.
Very, very rapid growth.
What created that? Because you went through COVID during that time too, which was not an easy time in some ways in home services. But what kind of created that rapid growth?
We were deemed essential during COVID, which was a wonderful thing, and we can talk about that. Picking winners and losers. We just happen to be on the winner side of that in terms of our industry and our business. We really adopted an aggressive policy during COVID as an organization to stay in front of our people. What developed out of that and was the Waste No Day podcast, which was created at our center. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that was specifically created to train technicians and keep them engaged during COVID when we couldn't meet together. So there was innovative things that we did during that time to keep connected with our team. I was giving them addresses, via video and audio addresses to kind of keep them together. So while we distanced from each other, we could feel connected. I think, in listening to your first podcast that you guys put together, and I think, Steve, it was an interview of you and your journey. You discussed in terms of hiring people and processes. And I think that, one of the things that I'm very passionate about in terms of our organization is ensuring that our team is empowered and we're continuing to grow. So it's this kind of delegate and elevate thought process. And this is not unique to me. I mean, I'm a follower of Craig Rochelle, who, is a pastor and talks a lot about leadership journeys. And this whole notion that if you create a team that you can delegate to, it allows you to elevate to other things. And I've always been thinking about how can I move myself out of the business. I have a lot of other interests, a lot of other things that I want to do. But I also found that in the process of that, people have a higher level of engagement in their jobs. They have a sense of ownership that you really can't create in any other way other than allowing them to put their mark and their stamp on your organization. And when you unleash that and you unleash that, that human spirit in your business, I mean, it's really amazing what can be accomplished. And in our business, it meant that we grew tremendously, and we're highly profitable. I mean, we typically target about 22 to 23% net profit.
That's excellent.
That's on top of the franchise. I mean, the franchise fees are on top of that. So if you minus the franchise fees in our system, which can be anywhere from 4 to 6%, it'll tell you exactly how our business needs to operate in order to do that. So, the thing about having profit is it allows you to take care of your people. And so you can see how this goes in full circle. I love the conversation with customers about, hey, you're too expensive or this, or I can get it for less. I mean, it really is about how are you taking care of your people that take care of your customers? And that's really how I look at it in our business. This is about creating a system and a mechanism that takes care of the 150 people and families that we serve and that we have working in our team, and then what happens is that they take care of the people that take care of all of us, which is our customers. I never buy into the notion that the customer is always right. I don't think that's the case. I think in many cases they're wrong in terms of how they view why we do what we do. But I think that if you create for them an experience that's unique and deliver a level of service that is excellent in their eyes, that they'll be loyal to you for a long time. And you do that by taking care of your people, if that makes sense.
It was interesting listening to the Waste No Day podcast. There was talk about putting ladders up around the business. And maybe you could explain that and what that meant.
Well, I think what that means is it's when we talk about putting ladders up, what that means is it's creating career paths. So, when people come into our business, and oftentimes one of the challenges with many, many, small family-owned businesses, which is really what makes up a large majority of the home services businesses around the United States. However, that is changing and changing very rapidly, which is the reason that we're talking today. But you think about that, if it's held by a family or a tightly held group, there may be no opportunity for upward mobility. You come into an organization as a technician. If there's no focus on growth, what happens is, the only people that are in charge are people that have the same last name, and there's really no opportunity to grow. In our organization, I mean, we want it to be a meritocracy in terms of those who perform at a higher level and have a desire to grow can absolutely grow to the highest level. I'm the perfect example of that. It was a family-owned business when I came into it, and to the credit of Larry Rohr, who was a visionary and an innovator, he understood that the way to create wealth and opportunity for his family was to allow somebody like me to come into the organization and to rise up and achieve at the highest levels that I did. And it paid him very well and his family very well. But that is the win-win mentality, right? I mean, it's not the scarcity mentality of, hey, this is mine and it's going to stay mine. What happens with that is it tends to get less and less and less and less and less. So When we talk about in our organization about putting ladders up, it is specifically around when we bring good people into our organization, we want them to be able to feel like they can retire from our organization in whatever capacity they so choose. So, and I think
Probably your own story there is probably inspirational to them, right? Because it's like you came
100%.
in as a sales advisor, right? So, and then, you basically worked your way up. So it's like, your own, plus that's probably quite handy for you, to be able to oversee the different departments, knowing that, you came from the field yourself. You didn't get
Yeah.
plunked in there. It's going to be a different story, for a lot of people, but,
Yeah, so I served as a comfort advisor, I served as a sales manager, I served as a service manager, I served as an install manager. They're really the only functions that I didn't get into too much was the financial function. We have, ironically enough, my son who graduated this year, I encouraged him to get an accounting degree. He does have an accounting degree. However, he's going to work for an insurance wholesaler that sells captive insurance products. So, but it was important. What I shared with him is the one thing that I didn't really have with the psychology degree was the accounting background. I had to learn that along the way. So,
great.
my only regret.
One thing that we
Sorry, go ahead,
go,
Steve.
go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, like, one thing that we really want to do here is help other contractors who are just trying to figure their stuff out. Maybe they're, a little bit disorganized, smaller contractors, and they're trying to take it to like the next step. Maybe, if you have some advice for other contractors, maybe they're at $3.5 million and they're trying to get to 10, or maybe they're at like 8 and they're trying to figure out how to get to 15. Like maybe possibly like some problems that you've had to struggle through, what your solutions were, or any other tips or advice that you have to contractors that are trying to get through each level.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is to recognize that you can't do everything yourself. I think that's a common theme for a lot of people. You have to delegate. You have to always be in the marketplace looking for great people to come alongside of you. I think, and Steve, I think it was you in one of your earlier podcasts, who said that, when you delegate something to somebody, they're never going to do it as well as you do it. They're never going to
At first.
at first. But I mean, I think, and then over the course of time, yeah, they grow and they may do it better than you. Even if they do it equally as well as you do it, that's still a win. But in many cases, I mean, I know certainly for myself, in all the positions that I've held, yes, people have exceeded my expectations in terms of what that looks like. I think the only interesting thing in terms of sales performance it's interesting to measure that over the course of time, because typically we measure it, we can certainly do it by closing percentage or by volume, but that has changed so much. And I think it's important to recognize, A, you can't do it yourself in terms of, and also B, creating processes and systems where the business can exist without you. And that's something that I was pretty intentional about doing prior to selling. It's important. EBITDA, if you are in the process of selling your business, I mean, your trailing 12 EBITDA oftentimes is one of the grails that you look at and you try to figure out, hey, how can we prop this up? And the one thing that I would tell people is don't, around issues like marketing and employee related expenses. I mean, you certainly want to buy, as best you can, but you don't cut those things, because those are the things that.
Well, I'm sure it would have been tempting to cut something, because I think, rough numbers, probably EBITDA wise, it might sell for 15 times, on the sale price, like a lot of private equity stuff, 10 to 15 times. So it's like every dollar that you cut is potentially 15 more dollars in your pocket.
Yeah.
So
I think I would say that's the wrong way to look at it. Because what you want to do is you want to set everybody up for success. And I think, again, I mean, if you adopt a win-win and an abundance mentality that there's enough for everyone, including your staff, including the private equity firm that's buying you, that's not to say that there's not going to be challenging times that are ahead and you have to make tough decisions. But if you do it deliberately to boost your EBITDA in a false sense, it will always come back around. And as they say, your sins will find you out. But I think it's the investment of energy into your team and talking about what the future could look like if you're preparing for sale is a very important thing. It's one of the things that I did for 2 years prior to selling with my team, is said, this is where we're going, guys. And I did it for everybody. And this is why we're doing it. We're doing it because we want to grow. We want to create opportunity. Again, it's consistent with the message that they've heard over the last 10 years.
So you actually pre-announced that you were probably going towards a sale of the company. You actually
absolutely.
Interesting.
I talked in general terms, so I didn't talk about the specific partners or when it might happen, but I let them know that this is really what I wanted to do, because I wasn't going to make, and I wasn't committed to making, the investments personally that it would take to get us to $200 million of revenue. I wasn't going to do it. Yeah. And based on, I'm 51 years old, where I want to be, I've been doing this for 25 years of my life. They've been a great 25 years, but I'm not doing it for the next 10, right? And so I was intentional about that and talking about that. But people understood where I was coming from, because they understood my past and decisions that I've made and opportunities for growth that people have seen in organizations. So it was real, if that makes sense. I mean, it's real to them.
So yeah, you kind of framed it in a benefit to them, because they want to be in a growing company, because that opens more opportunities for them.
Absolutely.
So you framed it sort of, it's interesting.
Yeah, it always was framed in a benefit to them, because quite frankly, nobody cares about it. I'm not saying they don't care about what it is for me, but that WIFM, WIIFM, what's in it for me, is really at the top of their mind. And it was, they knew that I was going to be fine, because everything was set up such that our new comp pay or our task pay programs, when they win, the company wins. And so this was all about, how can we make this best for those individuals that want to stay with our organization, and, like I said earlier, retire from it. That's my goal.
Kerry, I cut you off here earlier. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to go back to the growth period of the business. And the one of the first questions I have is that, did you have, say, a monthly budget based on your gross income percentage wise that you were spending on marketing? Because we have a lot of clients that work with us that they feel like marketing is more of an expense instead of an investment in the business to grow the business, and feel that one of the first places that they cut when they're not doing so well is they cut marketing, which actually cuts their knees out right from underneath them when trying to grow the business. Did you have kind of a number that you'd like to be at for marketing? And then I'll have an additional question about what your strategies were for marketing and bringing in leads as well.
Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, we had a number for everything in the business. Marketing happened to be one of those things that, as a percentage, I mean, I think as when I compare ourselves to a lot of our peers, our marketing as a percentage was probably pretty low, and from the growth that we experienced. I mean, we were usually somewhere around 8 or 9% of, and I know guys that spend significantly more than that. The only caveat I would say is that when you spend marketing dollars, it is absolutely imperative that you know how that money, what is the return on that money. And there's all kinds of ways to measure it and do it well. But the other thing is, if you are at capacity, so, one of the challenges that I saw around marketing specifically was that if we would spend more money and get more calls, I did not have the techs to run those calls. And so it is a fool's errand to think that to get more calls if you can't capitalize on those calls. There's nothing worse than that. So there's this balance, and I think we finally cracked the code around recruiting and creating, kind of a best places to work. But early on, I mean, we were very intentional about making sure that the marketing dollars we were investing, how were they returning leads, and how we were, and did we have the technicians and the individuals to run those calls? Because if you don't, it doesn't matter how many leads you come in. I mean, they're wasted. You might as well just flush it down the drain. Marketing has changed so much since 2000. I mean, I remember the days when we would send out, and John Young was a master of these letters about, the opportunities. It was a direct mail game, right? We did a lot of direct mail. And I think, and that has shifted. Certainly we do our share of radio and television. We do, all kinds of internet marketing. I think post-COVID, and you guys are the experts, and you probably know and see this, even the things that we knew in 21 and 22 are very different today, especially around internet marketing. And where are people getting their information? How is it getting disseminated? How is Google writing their algorithms that keep changing, and so it is very different. And I think as I talk to business owners across the country, the biggest challenge right now is digital marketing. I mean, bar none. And you guys probably would speak to that better than I would, but I just know from my personal experience that we're trying to figure out what is the best way to get calls on the board. One of the things that I created back in 2000 that really has paid significant dividends is we built out a 25-seat call center to basically handle what we needed, but then also fellow franchisees that are within probably an hour and a half radius of our location. We answer their calls. We do outbound marketing. We're able to cross-sell between our 1 hour customers, our Ben customers, and our Sparky customers. And so a lot of our growth during that time, especially in challenging marketing times, were really utilize or leveraging the great experience that our customers had with our 1 hour business and providing them with complimentary plumbing inspections or complimentary electrical inspections, having an opportunity to get into their home and see what's going on there, because everybody thinks that they should get their furnace checked and their air conditioner checked, but very few people think about their water heater. Very few people think about their plumbing system. Very few people think about their electrical system. So there was really an opportunity for us, in a very tactile way to, outbound to our customers that know us, that love us, and offer our sister companies. So
when you did the complimentary inspections, is that a salesperson going in?
No, that's a technician.
That's a tech. Okay,
that's a highly trained technician.
Right. And then let's say I'm not terribly familiar with the electrical industry, but let's say it was like a complimentary electrical inspection or something like that. Like, what would they be looking for? What would they be?
Great question. So there's all kinds of things. I mean, so these individuals that are the technicians are very, very well trained, and you have to be able to create value when you're there, meaning you're not just coming in and it's an automatic sales, type of relationship. This is about doing what you're there to do. We talk about that all the time. When a technician walks into a customer's home, the reason they called you is the reason you're there. So you need to fix that problem. Now, if it's a complimentary inspection, there's a whole process that we go through. What's specific to our area where we have a lot of older homes is we have electrical boxes that may have gotten water in them, that the bus bars may be rusted in certain cases or corroded, or there's arcing that's taking place. Breakers get hot. So we've invested significantly in FLIR infrared cameras that we can look at the box. We can see hot spots on that box. We can check breakers, because really what happens is if a breaker doesn't trip because it's old and it overheats, that's when fires start. That's when circuits get overheated. I mean, breakers are designed to trip for a reason. I mean, it sounds, you know, I know it's oftentimes an annoyance, but if a breaker trips, it typically doesn't, either the breaker's bad or there's something else going on. And so if you never look at it, those investments in infrared cameras really, to be able to spot a bad panel before it creates problems is a significant thing.
Right. Yeah. The sales process is interesting there. So like your call center will proactively call up somebody. Maybe you did an HVAC install a month before, and they'll call them up and they'll say, hey, we have our guy in the area. He's with our electrical team. We're doing some free inspections in the area, like something to that idea, like, because they already know you, they like you,
Right.
and then you just proactively offer it, and then you kind of cross sell.
Right.
That's quite interesting, because I think the future of the industry seems to be going towards multiple industries running out of one location to kind of create that effect that you guys have created. That seems to be like the direction of everything.
Well, the thing that we didn't talk about, I mean, you know, as our businesses, you know, certainly we started the franchise in 2004. Fast forward to 2024, 20 years later, so Authority Brands owns our businesses. They have now, I think it's 16 verticals, home services verticals that, you know, so there's a trade brand space, which is, you know, a restoration company. And then there is 1 Hour, Ben Franklin, Mister Sparky, but there's all kinds of other home services verticals that all of our customers need. So yes, to your point about what we were able to do in the trade brands in terms of cross-selling, that has now kind of created and evolved, you know, into the pest control business, the mosquito business. I mean, there's numerous opportunities that you know, innovative entrepreneurs have to grow their businesses in what I would say non-conventional ways, which is very much the reason I started the call center, because I had invested a lot of money in highly trained staff, and the ability that I had to source this out to other franchisees, it actually turned into a profit center for me, and really was a significant, valuable asset to the private equity firm that bought me as a result. Plus it dumped, you know, call it $1 million of EBITDA to the bottom line every year that was, you know, otherwise was an expense. So it was kind of, there's these little cracks and crevices in business that if you can kind of exploit those and figure out what you do well that others perhaps struggle with or aren't doing well, there's real opportunity there. And that's a great example of that.
Right.
It's interesting, yeah, because he went from having that call center as an expense to that call center being a profit driver for you.
Yep.
Just fantastic. And you know, it's interesting talking about where you're talking about the ways that you were getting into homes and then turning a new furnace or a new air conditioner into some other forms of profit or forms of revenue from it. And it's interesting because you've gone through a period from 2000 to now where it's probably one of the biggest shifts in marketing for the home services industry that there's ever been. Because,
I agree with that.
Because you go from, I mean, my background originally was newspapers and marketing in newspapers. So it was, you think about what newspapers were like until about the late 2000s or like 2008, 2009. There was a lot of people doing newspaper advertising, which you might have been doing, radio, TV, and then the switch over, and correct me, stop me if you have any of these that are you know, any questions or any thoughts on this. So the switch then went from that to everybody jumping into SEO, meaning I need to get to the top of these searches. And everybody was doing it. It was a lot easier at the time too, until Google started changing the algorithm and make it a lot more difficult. Then people jumping into Google Ads, and Google Ads were dirt cheap at the time, with the expenses going up dramatically as the cost per click went up. And then right around 2016, 2017, there was a shift over to social media advertising, from what I found. And then how do you sell that on social media? How do you sell a new air conditioner, a new furnace, or repairs on social media? Because people aren't going to social media when they're looking for those new products, or if they're, you know, it's the middle of July, it's 100 degrees outside, humidity is 80%. They're not going there to find the new system. How do you get them in from there. And then it's even shifted during COVID and after COVID as well. But I'm curious as to kind of what your evolution of marketing was, and on a general expense and a general idea, because of course you can really get into the weeds with this, and we don't need to. But your thoughts and where you went along those lines, and that would be great to hear how you did that.
You know what, Carrie, I think that our journey mirrored exactly what you just talked about. We did all of those things. One of the things that we delved into just prior to selling the business was, short of what you described in terms of, direct mail, then, certainly newspaper and yellow pages kind of got stretched out in there until it just died. And then as we entered, the internet age, one of the things that we did in 2020 was we engaged with Wizard of Ads and Roy Williams to do, and created a character around me and, so I was the face of all of our TV ads, all of our radio ads. And it certainly made me a local celebrity. One of the interesting things, we had done that for 3 years, and I was tracking, new customers to base, and were we seeing, short of making me a celebrity, in South Central Pennsylvania, because I was on TV and radio, and people would recognize my voice and see my face, and I'm not sure that it dovetailed with where I wanted to take the business around selling it. Because again, everything that we talk about in terms of selling your business is about how can you get you out of the business. Right. So I scaled that back about a year before sale, and basically we adopted more of a marketing strategy that our franchise brands and our folks at Authority Brands had put forth for us. But that was intentional. So I think that if I was growing a small business, and once you get to a certain scale, it is difficult to remain the face of your business. And as we march towards $200 million of top line sales, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that for me and what I wanted to do in terms of taking much more of a back seat, that didn't allow that to happen. But the marketing journey that you laid out is exactly what we followed. And I think that you're if you go back much before 2000, and even into the 90s, the home services business didn't even look like it does today. I mean, it was very fragmented. It was very mom and pop, and most people weren't even talking about marketing. It didn't exist. Whatever came in, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The marketing was get in the yellow pages and have your name be AAA, so you're at the very top. If somebody's looking for air conditioning repair. That was like early SEO with yellow pages. Make your name be the top alphabetically.
Just out of curiosity, just to shift gears just for a sec, because I know that we don't have for the time that we got. It's like as you kind of grow in the business, your problems change. So I'm curious, the stage that you're at and where you're trying to get to, what is your cutting edge problems right now that you're struggling through to get you from, like your 35 million going towards $200 million a year? What is the stuff now that you're struggling through?
It's people issues. And I say people issues. Who I work with is my executive team. Right. I do some training, Wednesday mornings. I'll do some, a book that changed my life is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The two most influential books are certainly to me are the Bible and that book. So I talk about, and I want to train usually 3 times a year. I do some trainings around 7 Habits of Highly Effective People for our team. But where my focus lies right now is developing my executive team and trying to figure out who's the next CEO of our organization. I mean, that's really, I think, where my main focus is. That, and what I'm spending most of my time doing now is meeting with other business owners for acquisition. So we have
Hmm.
We have a bunch of acquisition targets. I mean, we're not going to get, we're not going to get from 35 to 40 million to 200 million organically. It's going to have to come through acquisition. So my goal is that we make 3 acquisitions this year by the end of the year. I think I'm on track to do that. And then next year, so what we're creating is a regional multi-state footprint for our brands. And then the multiples change significantly as the revenue changes and the EBITDA changes. But then that's a win for the shareholder. So that's basically what I'm in the process of doing and focusing on now. But it's a people thing for me, and it's about how am I creating a leadership team of top talent that can build their own teams and do that. Because there's that, quite frankly, I only have so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
And when the fall comes, I travel to watch my daughter. Like I said, she plays field hockey at the University of Maryland. I'm going to be all over the country watching her compete. I have a younger daughter that also plays, and so I need to create a team that can continue to grow the business in my absence.
What problems still seep up to you? Because if you got an executive team that should be dealing with all the problems without it even hitting your desk, what problems at the stage that you're at, the level that you're at, still make it through to you that go, oh God, I got to deal with that?
There's no day-to-day problems that would creep up to me.
Nice.
My brother's the president of our company, and he handles that. What problems, what do we talk about? I mean, certainly we're talking. I mean, executive comp is one of the things that I work with. Executive bonus plans are things that I work with. I don't, but the other day-to-day operational problems, I don't. I mean, that would stop at my brother. So
Mhm.
I work with bonus plans and comp plans for the executive team. Well, you know what? The one biggest thing is that happened recently that kind of bubbled up to me because I had the relationship is we had some pricing discrepancies with an equipment vendor that we spend millions of dollars with a year, and we needed a better price. So I had the relationship, so
Yeah.
we worked through that, and it was a 30-year relationship with that vendor, and it's a very positive. We have a friendship. So
Right.
I was the one that owned that relationship, and I had to get involved there, and we got it done. And I'm looking forward to another 30 years. Well, both he and I will be out of the business by then, but so those sorts of things are things that I'll get involved in.
Right. Right.
We're talking about people, and one of the things that we run into a lot when we go to these trade shows is we get business owners saying the biggest problem they have is getting good people and keeping good people.
Yep.
And do you kind of have a way that you what you do to try to keep good people, get good people and keep them? One of our guests before said that if you have the techs, you own the market. And he was very much involved with training and keeping people and having these weekly or monthly meetings where saying, hey, I've learned this type of thing. So I'm curious as to what your strategy was to get and keep good people.
Yeah, that's always, so it's funny. When I hear people say, well, I can't find good people, oftentimes I look at those individuals and say, look in the mirror. Are you a good person? Are you somebody that a good person wants to work for? And I think so, first and foremost, when I talk about creating an executive team, people, people leave bad managers, right? And I think that so in terms of attracting superstars, you need to create a team of superstars, and eagles flock with eagles. So I really think that we have done a good job of creating, strong discipline leaders that attract great talent. You have to pay best in class, in my opinion, and we do that. You have to have the best benefits for your team. And there was a time when, I might have told you in my youth that, young guys that work in HVAC, plumbing, electrical businesses, they're not really concerned about benefits. Well, guess what happens? young guys get married and have kids, and then they're really concerned about benefits. And if you think about creating, a longevity of employees, of creating great people, you have to have great benefits. You have to have a fleet that is up to date, that's clean. You have to have tools that are clean. You have to have an expectation around what does your truck look like, because these guys are driving in it. What are your uniforms? How are you going to market? And all of those things you need to be able to be proud of. And those little things attract great people. And you have to be competitive. You have to have bonus structures that they can strive towards. Because listen, great people, that's what they want. That's what they want. They always want to be getting better, improving. And so it's not just a one thing. Hey, this is what it takes to get great people. It's this whole encompassing environment of being a great place to work, and it has to do with your image, the excitement that you generate in the morning in your morning meetings. All of those, they want to be part of something bigger than themselves.
And also going back to what we were discussing about ladders is not getting into a situation where you've reached a dead end or a glass ceiling in your position at a business, I imagine.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, listen, if an employee of mine thinks that they can get a better opportunity somewhere else, then they're going to go. And quite frankly, I think they should go. I'm not under that naive pretense that everybody's going to stay in my company for the rest of their life. But my goal has always been that when they are here with us, whether it's for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, that as a person, they leave better than they came. So that's why we're talking about training on 7 habits of highly effective people. I mean, certainly, is that going to make them a better technician? Yes, absolutely, I believe so, but it's not going to make them better technically. It's going to make them certainly more interested in other people. It's going to make them better listeners, understanding, creating high levels of empathy with the clients that they serve. But I think at the end of the day, it's also going to impact their family relationships. It's going to impact their relationships with their kids, their wives, their neighbors, their people at their church. And all of that stuff is about making better people. And I think that if they sense and feel that, that's a very attractive thing in an organization.
Has that always been? It's interesting what you say that, because I've heard other people talk about something similar. Where, like, has it been a driving force, kind of behind the scenes for you, that you're almost in the people development business?
100%.
As much as you are in, so that's been actually a motivator for you and a kind of a higher purpose to help your team develop as people, and that's in turn made your business grow.
Yeah. So I feel like, and this may sound cliche, but it's the truth that I live, is that I was put on this earth to create opportunities for others. I'm a connector of people.
I like that. It's interesting.
And I think that because HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, not that sexy, right? I mean, it's not that, but I don't think that I could have found an opportunity that would have, created the lifestyle for me that I always wanted, but then also was able to create opportunities for technicians. I feel like technicians need to be some of the top paid people, at what they do. I mean, we have technicians that will make $150,000, $200,000 a year. This is life-changing money for a lot of people. It allows them to send their kids to school, to have more kids, quite frankly. I had a guy that, I'll never forget this day. He thanked me for the opportunity. The year before, he's making $30,000 a year. He came to my company. He made $120,000 the first year. He said, we can have another kid in our family because we feel like we can afford it now. That's awesome.
Great.
That's awesome. And so that's the stuff that makes me tick and gets me excited. I think that Zig Ziglar was right when he talked about helping enough people get what they want, because in turn, all of our team members help me achieve my dreams and goals, and that's really what it's about.
I like that. I like that.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, I listen. I think I don't know. This is a business that I absolutely love. My journey will continue. I've committed to Broad Sky for the next couple years. I hope that relationship continues in the go forward. I don't know if it'll be just in the home services business. I have other things I'm very passionate about. One of those things is golf. I'm in Lancaster here. We hosted the U.S. Women's Open about a month ago. I was the president of our club during that time. We have some more opportunities with the USGA in the go forward. So I don't know what the future necessarily looks like, but what I do know is that I don't think that there's any better opportunity for a young person, not knowing what they want to do than in the trade brands business. And there's all kinds of ways to get into our business, whether it's in sales, whether it's in service, whether you're, a call taker, or whether, quite frankly, my CFO, came out of the banking world, and he was a caddy at our club for a bunch of years, and met a friend and who connected us, and he never thought he'd be in our business either, but it's a wonderful opportunity, and it's a wonderful business to be in.
Yeah, you definitely tell that your background, your competitive background, has driven you quite a bit in your business and things that you do.
Yes.
And finding something to be competitive with every day, whether it's with the business, whether it's with the people in the business, just to make things better and just get better all around.
Yep. Yep. It's about, listen, this business and any business is about building teams. And, whether you're the GM of a baseball team or, of a soccer team, or the GM of an HVAC business, I mean, this is all about putting the pieces together and building the team. And that's what I really, really enjoy. It'd be cool if I could be anything in life. I might want to be a soccer coach, quite honestly, but that's not the path I chose. So I'm going to use the same things in this business.
Yeah, there's many things that we all go through in life where this is what we'd really like to be, and it kind of leads us down another pathway, even though we're not blessed to be able to do, like you said, become a professional soccer player, or
Right.
For me, be a top curler in the world, that type of thing. And just sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Right.
But it's interesting that, the way things are brought down, and the way things kind of happen in life, and and getting an opportunity, things falling in your lap. And then the things that fall in your lap, take advantage of it when it happens. And I mean, prime example is how I met Steve. It just kind of happened, just kind of fell in my lap. And it was really close to not happening, and just thinking what happened after that. But also, like I was saying, is that when you get those things that fall in your lap and it looks good, you have to take advantage of it while you can. And obviously that's what you did with your, going back to the beginning with your career. It just kind of fell into your lap, and you've run with it since then.
Yeah. I love the definition of luck that I love is this definition of, it's where preparation meets opportunity. And that's what so how do you create your own luck? You prepare, because you're right, stuff's going to fall into your lap. And that's the opportunity, right? But you have to create the preparation leading up to that. So when that does fall into your lap, you're ready to excel. But there is no luck in this world. It's about creating and being prepared for when the opportunity strikes. So
just to is there anything that we can do to help you here? Like, for instance, if there's companies in your area, HVAC companies over, say, a certain size that are possibly thinking of selling, to proactively reach out to you, or is there anything that
I would, so we're focusing in the near term, and I say the really near term, at creating our franchise brands. But tuck-in businesses, we would love to talk. I mean, in South Central Pennsylvania, in Maryland, in New Jersey, in Delaware.
Is there a certain size that you prefer?
Honestly, I think size, if it's $500,000 of EBITDA or more, I mean, that's a pretty significant size companies. I know there's opportunities to tuck excuse me, one or two or three truck operators. And those are, I would love to buy some companies of scale. We have some conversations going on right now, but I would say $500,000 or more of EBITDA is probably, what that would look like. So it's probably what, I mean, depending on how they operate, is probably a $2.5 million company or larger.
Any specific industries?
What's that?
Any specific industries in ones you want to invest in?
I think it would be in the plumbing, heating, air conditioning, or electrical. All three of those trade brands businesses is what we're targeting and looking for.
And if they wanted to get a hold of you, contact you, where would they go? What should they do?
Yeah, so if they wanted to get a hold of me, the best way to get a hold is to dial our call center, which is area code 717-299-7300, and then just ask for me is the best way to do it. I don't know if there's any links that you're going to post to this, or how that's gonna. I mean, we could certainly talk about that. But I think the best way to do it is just to contact the call center, and they're very clear in terms, because listen, we have a lot of people that reach out, especially since they're familiar that the deal went through. It's amazing how many people reach out to you.
Sure. Yep.
There's also a lot of telemarketers, so I'm sure people can't just call in and say, "Hey, I'd like to talk to Matt." Oh, sure, here he is.
Yeah, well, you know what? Here's what happens is I get all the I get all the messages and I see it. So if it's there's a lot of telemarketers that call and want to talk to Matt.
Just circling back, just for one thing you mentioned earlier, what percentage of your business is actually driven by your call center? And not from marketing or not from previous customers?
I would suggest that our growth, in terms of a specific percentage, I would probably, and this would be a guess, but I'm guessing that 10 to 15% of our business is driven out of
okay. So it's like you're just driving it internally, which is quite
interesting. Yeah, it's kind of we're very intentional about cross-selling and cross-branding, and technicians, if a Benjamin Franklin tech is in there and he sees a condensate leak on a furnace or an air conditioner, he's going to bring it to their attention, and we're going to get another technician out. I mean, it's something, it's a cultural thing that we are ingrained, and I think that where that all starts is that we all train together. So we have a big training room where we bring every single brand together, so they're feeling like they're brothers in arms, right? They're not segmented by brand or segmented by occupation, but rather we're all members of the Punctual Pros team, and they know each other. They go hunting together, they go to races together, they hang out together, they spend some weekends together. And when you know that your buddy doesn't have a call to run or is a little slow this day, you want to help him out as best you can. And that's a culture that we create intentionally.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a culture.
This is great. So thank you very much, Matt, for joining us.
Yeah, guys, thanks. Good conversation. And let's keep in touch. If there's anything else that you guys want to discuss and talk about, just let me know.
This might need a part 2. I think.
Okay. Well, we didn't even really talk about all the intricacies of the sale and things of that nature, so it may need a part 2.
I know we can. I think we can go for hours.
Yeah, I think it's a very fascinating, this journey, especially with Broad Sky. Broad Sky, I think it would be interesting to talk about what to look for, especially in a private equity partner, which I was very intentional about, because there was a lot of interest in our business. We narrowed it down.
HVAC is very hot right now for the PE world.
It is red hot, and especially when you have the diversification of a tri-branded entity like we do.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're looking for. Yeah.
And the growth, the upside of growth that we have. But I can't say enough good things about Broad Sky and the team there and what we're planning on doing. I mean, we have some pretty ambitious goals. And but it's key critical that you find the right partner to partner with in that, because it can be a nightmare if it's not the right fit. And our businesses, man, there's ebbs and flows. You guys know it. There's ebbs and flows, ups and downs. I mean, it can be super red hot, or it can be a challenge. And when the weather comes, we don't always know. So we want to neatly segment our businesses in months and in quarters, and we have this budget for this quarter. But if the weather, meaning if it gets really hot or really cold and it spans a couple quarters, it may not make them look as good as what we think. So you need a little bit of creativity to look at our businesses and how they work, but they're awesome businesses. They're just cash flow machines, and I'm so happy that I found it.
I love it. I think let's do another pod in the future and deep dive something, whether it's sales or mindset or 20 other topics, and we'll do like a super deep dive on something specific to the home service industry.
I want to, and this doesn't have to be on the podcast, but I want to challenge you guys with a book that changed my world. And you may have read it. It's the Who Not How book by Dan Sullivan. Are you familiar with that book?
I recognize the name.
And the title, and I want to read this because it's the formula to achieve bigger goals through accelerated teamwork. And it's a book that, as I listen to your other podcasts, it actually really brings into succinctness a lot of the concepts you were talking about scaling and creating teams and different things. So if you haven't read it, it's a quick read.
I like it. Yeah, I will. That's great.
You let me know what you think, but I think that that book changed my life. And I don't train on that book, but in terms of how I think, it makes a lot of sense to me.
I love it.
It's interesting because the book that changed my life was Moneyball.
The Moneyball, okay, yep.
For marketing and
sure.
knowing numbers and doing things differently based on what those numbers point you to. And I've probably read it 3 or 4 times, and every time I pick something else out of it. And it's always good. I appreciate you recommending that book, because there's always ways that I know I want to make myself better, make myself better as a business owner too.
Dr. Seuss was quite influential for you too, right, Carrie?
Dr. Seuss, yes.
I love Dr. Seuss.
Steve had to get one in before the end.
That's right.